Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brodinsky, and sharing that split screen with me is Christina Tatta, Republican Town Councilor. Christina, you had a budget. You proposed a budget. It got vetoed. What happened?
Yes, the budget passed by the council 6-3. The mayor vetoed, and you need 7 votes to override a veto. So a supermajority, and we did not have that. The vote remained 6-3.
So let me throw a curveball at you. So if Chris Shortell was on the council, would you have overridden the veto? I mean, he was part of the, part of the upstarts in the prior years.
Yeah, the last 2 years, we did override the veto with Chris. So now we have Sam and Autumn, the 2 new counselors. So a little bit of a different makeup.
Different dynamic, I get it. So what exactly were you trying to accomplish anyway with your budget?
The purpose really was to lessen the tax impact on the residents and businesses. I think we all realized what a tough financial time this is for people, and so we did everything we could to try to find where the savings were, and we also we did it in a way that we thought we could get the most people on board with it. So we really didn't do anything that the mayor hadn't already done in his budget. We just took it a bit further and moved some money around to get a little bit of a lesser tax impact.
So more specifically, what did you do with respect to the reserves? We'll go down the list. We'll go down the list after.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did you do there?
So with the reserves, in the mayor's budget, he proposed using 6.4 million, and we upped that by 1.5 to get to use, well, I shouldn't say to use, to assign 7.9 million. And I think we all know that we'll never come close to that. It's basically a number on paper.
Yeah.
Budget.
So that was one reason he objected to that. So that's 1.5 million. And then there was something that you did with the capital non-recurring fund. Would you just sort of walk us through the difference between what you did and what the mayor wanted?
Yes. So with the cap and non, that's money from the electric division. When they have profits, the money, a certain amount of that money goes back to the town, and it gets used, it gets put into the cap and non account, which is for capital expenditures. What we did was we took $220,000 out of that, and we still funded those capital projects, but we used the federal ARPA money instead. So in effect, that $220,000 from the electric division went to the general fund, which allowed a bit of a tax decrease.
Well, I want to clarify. I think you did clarify it, but I just want to emphasize something. The mayor, in his veto message and in his verbal comments at the council meeting on Tuesday night, referenced this dangerous trend of intercepting money going to the capital non-recurring fund, leaving the impression that the capital non-recurring fund now had less to work with. But you're saying that's really not the case, I think.
Correct. We were still funding all of the same items that the mayor's budget funded. We just proposed using $220,000 with ARPA money as opposed to using the electric division money. So okay. All the projects would still be completed either way.
Okay. So no fear about starving the capital non-recurring account. That's a myth. If anyone brings that up, that's a myth. You gave the capital non-recurring fund the exact amount of money it wanted. Okay, the poor Board of Education. Everybody picks on the poor Board of Education. You starved them. What did you do?
Well, we cut their contingency line, which the mayor's budget had $500,000 in their contingency line, which is basically a line for what ifs. So you want a little bit of a buffer there for things that come up unexpected. We cut that by $250,000. So we still left them a pretty generous buffer of $250,000 in their contingency line. And we also did the same thing on the general government side, but the general government had $250,000 in their contingency line. We reduced that by $100,000, leaving that with $150,000.
So you didn't lay off any teachers or anything?
No effect on services whatsoever.
All right, I'm sure. And then finally, the felony that you committed, the mortal sin, was using even more ARPA money. For what? Just walk us through what you did and why the mayor didn't like it.
Sure. There was a list of capital items, mostly police and fire items. So public safety, which is an acceptable, allowable use of ARPA. We used about $838,000 from ARPA funding to fund those items that were in the mayor's budget. So again, it's not using tax money, it's using ARPA money, but everything is still being funded.
You use the word capital items, and I'm not sure everyone or I understand what that means. What are you referring to? What's a capital item? Give me an example.
Police cruisers was a big one. The fire department had, I believe, hoses, different equipment. So they're items that are not recurring. I mean, every year those departments will have recurring capital costs, but these specific items are one-time purchases.
Okay, so the argument against what you and 5 other counselors were trying to do, one of the arguments was you're going to blow up the bond rating. And if you blow up the bond rating, so the theory goes, not only is it a blow to the pride of the administration and their bragging rights are compromised and all that, because people think that a bond rating is equivalent to a good management practice, but they're not the same. But you blow up the bond rating, and in theory, interest rates for the town go up if they want to borrow money. And that could be costly. And so what's the answer to that? It's the allegation we've heard year after year after year, there goes the bond rating, but maybe they're right this time. What do you say to that?
They could be. The problem with the bond rating is that there's not a checklist of you must have X amount, you must do this, you must do that. It's the credit rating agencies, they have their standards, but it's largely a judgment call. I believe I also heard when our bond rating did dip that little bit, just the fact that we were in the state of Connecticut, I heard had an effect because the state wasn't doing so well and they were kind of taking money from towns that had savings accounts. So you never really quite know what affects the bond rating. So I think it's certainly something to consider and it's important. But I don't think what we did would have had a massive effect on that.
Well, let's see. I happen to have, and I'm going to ask for your patience and the viewers' patience here, the last available bond rating from Moody's, and it's dated October 4, 2021. So it's not that old. Mm-hmm. And I want to take a couple of minutes to review it because there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, in the public and the papers and on the council about what this bond rating is. And you listen to the comptroller and, Vinny Cervoni or some others, and the bond rating all hinges on the balance in the general fund. But, that is not so true. So I just want to spend maybe a couple minutes more than I should on what Moody's actually wrote, what they actually said, rather than the rumor. So bear with me. And even what I'm going to give you is an abbreviated summary, all right? Because there's too much. But this is the update to the town of Wallingford's credit analysis by Moody, and they say this in their summary. The town of Wallingford is AA1 stable. Connecticut's overall credit profile is strong. Wallingford's historically balanced operating profile is supported by management's conservative budgeting practices. The town benefits from significant financial resources held outside of its general fund and prudently funds its long-term pensions and post-employment benefits liabilities on an annual basis. So it gave, in August of 2021, a stable rating, AA1. The credit strengths for Wallingford was growing tax base, additional reserves outside of the general fund, which no one really talks about during these debates on the bond rating. You can actually look at other sums available to the government. And the other credit strength that they summarize here is low long-term liabilities and fixed costs. Credit challenges, resident wealth and income below similarly rated state and national peers. It's nothing anybody can do anything about. The rating outlook, Stable outlook reflects our expectation that the town's finances will remain stable over the next several years based on revenue flexibility. In code, that means you can raise taxes if you have to meet your obligations. That's what revenue flexibility means, or my interpretation of it. So based on revenue flexibility and a history of conservative budgeting, factors that could lead to an upgrade, material increase in reserves and liquidity. Liquidity is the cash position of the town. I'll get into that maybe in a minute or two. It has to do with cash flow. It has nothing to do with the tax rate, really. I think it has to do more with when and how we bond. Factors that could lead to an upgrade is continued tax-based growth and improve resident incomes and wealth. Factors that could lead to a downgrade, deterioration of reserves and liquidity. There it is. And tax-based contraction. Now they have a chart. Yeah, I'm not done. I know. They have a little rating chart, and they give all the key indicators. The fund balance is only one of 19 criteria, only one of 19. Yet you listen to the council meeting and the fund balance is the only thing. No, not true. It's only one of 19. And the fund balance, when they gave this score, they gave it a score of a AA. They rated each 19 differently. Some they rated with a AA or a single A. Some were AAA, and one of the criteria had a lousy rating, a junk bond rating of BAA. And that had to do with a change in the cash balance of the town. And again, if anyone is interested, and the next time the budget comes up, you can ask Tim Cena, the comptroller, how come we got a low grade or a low mark for the cash balance? Does that have anything to do with when you decide to bond and replenish our bank account with cash? But it has nothing to do with council policy as far as I know. But, with 19 things, for example, the economy is graded, the tax base is graded, the median family income is graded, the cash balance is graded, management's style is there, debt is there. We have a low debt compared to a lot of other towns, and so on and so forth. That's my point on that. Let me turn the page, and then I'll be done with you, or done with this piece of paper. I can throw it on the floor. And now it kind of gets interesting. Detailed credit considerations. It says Wallingford's $6.5 billion tax base is expected to remain stable. New development, don't laugh now, new development within the town includes a host agreement with a data center, which will likely be under a payment in lieu of taxes agreement spanning 20 years. A little obsolete, but that's how they saw it then. Okay, I know. And Amazon and Amazon.com Inc. distribution warehouse may be constructed on the former Bristol-Myers site. The plans are currently in the zoning process. That's how they saw it then, or that's what management told them then. The Bristol-Myers Squibb Company, which had previously been the town's largest taxpayer, vacated in 2018. Property remains vacant. I mean, this is the detail that they go into in establishing a credit rating. It's not just fund balance, and that's why I'm going through this to get more perspective. So I'm gonna skip some stuff. They also talk about the electric division being a positive influence on the health of the town. I think management, the mayor and the comptroller, they always sort of feature that, and why not? Why the heck not? Then they go into a lot of data points about how wealthy the town is, the town residents are, what their income is compared to other towns, and so on. And it says the town's resident incomes and wealth adequately support strong property tax revenues. And I think what that means is the townspeople could afford to pay more taxes. This is from the perspective of creditors who want their bonds paid. They want to know, can Wallingford pay the debt? And they said, yeah, taxes we can increase taxes. So that's what that messaging is. All right, I'm coming to the end here. Financial operations, this more implicates the council more. Wallingford's financial position is expected to remain strong through conservative budgeting. At the close of fiscal 2020, the town had $28.4 million available in the general fund balance. Notably, the town maintains additional financial resources outside of its general fund that could be accessed to support general government operations. They refer to the capital non-recurring fund, not the undesignated balance. They refer to the entire balance of the capital non-recurring fund, even the money that has been assigned for projects, because they say if the mayor and the council were of the same mind, this money could be pulled out of the capital non-recurring fund. And again, if the mayor, pulled the right strings, and that could be used to pay the bondholders back. That's the kind of thing that credit rating agencies look at. How are our bondholders going to be protected? Say, well, you got the capital non-recurring fund and you have the CRRA fund. So in fiscal 2022, they talk about the budget. They talk about the money that was pulled out of the fund balance to balance the budget. And listen to this. Moody's says, while the town often utilizes some amount of the fund balance in its budgeting process, typically it goes unexpended or is reimbursed before the year end. And it says the town is set to receive 13 million ARPA funds and may use the funding to run a loan or grant program for local business. So Mayor Dickinson told Moody's, we're going to use the ARPA money. By the way, we didn't talk to the council about this, but we're going to use this money for business loans or possibly for water and sewer projects. And the Moody's was impressed with Wallingford's low debt. And that, is page 4 of this, and the rest is sort of boilerplate. I'm not going to go into it. But there you go. 1 year or 2 years of a decrease in the fund balance. It doesn't seem to much matter. If Tim Cena, the comptroller, said at the meeting, I had a talk on the phone with Moody's. They were really concerned, Christina, with you personally. They were really concerned that you were going to drop the fund balance and there goes our credit rating. No, there's an interview over the phone and 19 issues were probably discussed and the fund balance was one of the 19. I'm done.
Well, the funny thing too is they even realize that we don't spend what we're going to. Like, they're onto it.
They got the picture. Who's got the picture? Well, I get my next note and my next piece of paper here in front of me. Your thoughts on what I just read?
Yeah. Well, the biggest concern when you said that they look at the growing tax base, and then you listed those projects that didn't happen, and whether it was. There's obviously different opinions on whether it was good or bad that those didn't happen, but that's actually a big concern of mine this year with this budget, is that other towns around us seem to be growing their grand list, and we're not growing ours very well right now, and that's a big concern of mine. So I'm hoping that within the next year and beyond, that's a focus of the administration to try to grow that.
Yeah. I got a little checklist that I wrote down as I went through the town council meeting on Tuesday night. And so one of the claims was that the 3 councilors that supported the mayor and who upheld the mayor's veto, Cervoni, Laffin, and Allinson, the allegation was they're just being loyal to the mayor. That's all there is to their vote. That's how you explain it. Is that too harsh? Is that unfair? Is there some truth to that? Just react to that.
Yeah, I think there is a loyalty there. I also think a lot of it is that maybe they just simply agree with everything that he's doing. It's tough. There's loyalty, and then there's if you think something is not right or is the wrong direction. I think there's times when maybe you need to put your job as a counselor before that, and you can do it respectfully, and you can disagree. So I'm not sure what the rationale is, if it's more that they just simply agree with his philosophy, which very well could be.
Okay. I guess I do have a small comment on that. I mean, the difference between, I'm going to call it for now, the Tatta budget and the Dickinson budget. Of course, you were joined by 5 other counselors, but the difference is not all that great. I mean, it's not all that dramatic. So I think one could rationally take the position upon seeing the mayor's budget on April 1, hey, it's okay, not that bad, could be, it's not terrible, and decide that that's good enough, we're going to vote for it. And if there's an error, because we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know how everything is going to end up. So given that uncertainty, someone could take the position, I'd rather go with a little bit of tax increase rather than risk an adverse development, at the end of the year, an adverse financial development at the end of the year. Very rational, I think is very fair. But also, if a block of three holds together time and time again, of course, you're inviting the perception, that it's all partisan loyalty. That's just the way politics is and government is. It's just how it works.
And that's the tough part about. I mean, everything went by the way our system works, but the tough part is with a veto, you had the majority of the council, 2/3 of the council said this is the way that we think is best for the town. And when the mayor has a veto, it needs 7 votes. So basically what happened was the minority of the council made a decision for the town for fiscally for the next year of how things are going to go. And that's just the way the system's set up with when a veto happens. But it is interesting that 2/3 of the council were not going into this fiscal year with what 2/3 of the council thought was the right way to go.
Yeah. Vinnie Testa had some comments that I want to play, and I wanted to get your reaction to those comments. So let's roll that clip now. 3, 2, 1.
This year, there was an effort made on the part of a majority of the council, and it was symbolic. Don't kid yourself. Symbolically, we were able to say to the community, no tax increase. Even a little slight reduction. Is it going to make a big difference in your day-to-day life? No. But goodness gracious, the optics of raising taxes was disturbing, to say the best, to so many people. So we were able to say, you know what? Mayor got us pretty darn close with his way of budgeting. And we can take it a little farther, doing the same exact thing, only with a little bit of different scale, so we can just simply tell the people of Wallingford, we can get you to no taxes this year. We know how you feel.
So Vinnie Testa said it was symbolic. It doesn't make a big difference, but I don't know. Do you agree with that?
I too, I think, use the word symbolic, and to an extent, I think, so our budget would have saved the average household $25. The mayor's raised it $99. So it's a $125 difference for the average household. So spread over a year, I guess his point is that's not going to make or break anybody. I think for me, what's more symbolic is the mill rate. So we have a mill rate that kind of keeps going up. And I think years ago, maybe Wallingford was looked at as a more affordable town, and maybe we didn't have the flashiest things, but it was such a good bargain for taxes for the mill rate that you kind of figured, well, you get what you pay for. But now our mill rate's creeping up over the years, and our taxes are close to where other similar towns are, and yet those towns are kind of keeping up with things and looking better, and we have kind of some infrastructure that needs work. And so for me, the symbolism is more with the mill rate. If you're going to keep letting that mill rate creep up and up, you need to give people back something for that. They need to see what their taxes are going for.
Vinny Cervoni also had some comments, and he summarized the case for the mayor and for himself and Autumn Allinson, I believe. That clip runs about 2 minutes. Let's take a look at what Vinnie Cervoni had to say. I'll get your reaction at the end of that.
This budget, as proposed, either way, contains 5 new positions in town and 4 promotions. There's 2 new positions in the police department, 2 new positions in the fire department, 1 new position in public works, and then 2 promotions in the fire department and 2 promotions in the police department. So there are increases in spending there. There are increases in spending to keep up with all of the contractual wage increases in the approved union agreements. What the council's budget has done is, to use Mr. Shortell's phrase, is there's a further starving of the cap and non-reoccurring fund. I think the practice that we have followed for decades of funding capital projects with the money from the electric division is a good practice that we should keep up. The council's approved budget significantly increases the spending of ARPA funds. And I am more interested in waiting to hear about the need of ARPA money before the town spends it on itself. I understand the mayor's proposal had some ARPA spending in it, but I think the council's went much, much deeper. The mayor does rely upon the unallocated reserve. His budget was $6 million from the unallocated reserve to balance the budget and reduce the tax increases. The proposal from the council is to take $1.5 more million out of that. My issue with that is, taking a look to the future approach, is that we are going to be bonding. We have a police station project we're working on. We've acquired a building. It's going to cost at least $20 million to further outfit the building. We're going to bond for that. So the bond rating becomes important. So when the comptroller tells me that we are at 14 million, I believe, in unallocated reserve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, okay. And with a $180 million annual budget, we should be looking more towards an $18 million unallocated reserve. What the council's changes to the budget have done have further challenged our ability to try and get back that $4 million into the unallocated reserve. So those are my issues with the council's budget.
Any thoughts on Vinny Cervoni's comments? Any thoughts that we have not yet covered on this episode?
Yeah, one of the comments was in regards to the ARPA money. So the mayor had ARPA money in his budget, and the mayor himself stated at the public hearing, we save everyone tax dollars by using some of this. And so Chairman Cervoni's comment about he wanted to assess the need before the town spends it on itself. I think to say the town spending it on itself seems like a selfish endeavor, when the point of that was to pay for capital projects that the town needs and not use taxpayer money for that. And then as far as the reserves, we already covered that, but I think we all know, even the mayor's 6.4, if we were ever to use 6.4, that would be a catastrophe. I think we all know we're not going to use the 6.4.
Yeah, I do want to put the history of Wallingford's deficit and surplus in context, though, and I want to put up a little JPEG slide from prior shows, actually. In 4 of the last 5 years, we have run operating deficits that haven't been huge. In 1 year, there was a surplus, but that was only because the Board of Ed ran a huge surplus. So we are on sort of a trend of kind of making sure that the general fund balance goes down. I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing. Maybe it's not, but it is what it is. I mean, that's the history of it. There are some myths out there, and especially in social media land, that say, well, the mayor, overtaxes and socks it away, so we run greater and greater surpluses. That is not true, as you can see from that chart. We broaden out the history from 2004, and we can see some years there were deficits and some years there were surpluses. Those are the facts. I'm just reporting here, and that's the context for it.
And I think if I can jump in here, I think Councilor Marone brought it up, I believe, at Tuesday's meeting. He said if that is the philosophy, and they want, the administration wants the 10%, which would be $18 million. he suggested just put a line item in for it. Just be transparent and say, we need another $4 million to get this to where we want it to be. And that's the philosophy. And there's a line item for it. I think some of the frustration comes in where we know that the salary lines are being budgeted for full staffing, and we know we're not going to have it. And so the money kind of falls in place to where it needs to go. But I think there's some counselors that just feel like it should just be stated clearly and have its own line item.
Yeah, I hear you. We all know that the budget is not to be taken literally. When the mayor assigns 6.4 million from the fund balance, we all know there's no serious intent to spend any of that. If we run an operating deficit, we use a little of that to the extent we've had a deficit. But we all know this is sort of a, let's not take this budget too seriously. And every budget season, we bring that up. And the mayor has a bit of a wiggle to sort of explain why he presents a budget that no one should really take all that seriously. It's because, just the way he does it. I do have a question for you, though, as to why you did what you did. We have $1 million in a pool fund that was appropriated last year. It's gathering dust. It's never going to be used. It was done, I think, symbolically, maybe in a way to pander to the Save the Pool crowd. That money could have been used. That money can be pulled out of the pool fund and used instead of reserves. It could have been used instead of ARPA funds. But there was a decision not to use that poor, lonely, unused, unloved pool money. How come you didn't touch it?
Well, I think because I think there is still hope for the pool. And now with the ARPA money, we've set aside a few more million now. And I think I don't think we're willing to pull the plug on that yet. So, next year, does that $1 million come into play? Maybe the year after, but I don't think we're ready right now to throw in the towel on the pool.
Well, that's kind of my point. You're not throwing the towel. You're not throwing in the towel on the pool. If you want the pool, you bond the pool. That was the original intent. You're going to bond every nickel of it. Instead, Vinnie Testa made a motion, I think it was last year, to put $1 million aside. I don't know the point of that. You're still, even he says we're going to bond the pool. So is it the appearance of it that you'll be attacked by the Save the Pool crowd if you spend their $1 million? Is that the problem?
I didn't really think of that. I believe Councilor Allinson did bring it up at one meeting, possibly using it. I don't believe there was a motion for it, but I believe she did bring it up. I guess the reason why I didn't want to touch that this year was because that was very important to Councilor Testa last year. And again, we talk about compromise and how we get a budget that gets 6 people on board and hopefully 7, and that was very important to him. So I wasn't a major fan of it, but I went along with it because that was something that was very important to him. And so I think we let it sit there another year or so, and we kind of ride it out.
So if you grab that $1 million of pool money, there goes the coalition, I think is what you're saying. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I think there would be people that wouldn't have been happy with that. For sure.
Okay, so to keep the coalition together, you leave the pool money aside, but maybe next year you may do something with it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, there was a back and forth between Craig Fishbein and the comptroller, Tim Cena. And in the course of that back and forth, a very obvious question was asked, and that is, what is the financial situation of the town right now with respect to surplus or deficit? Are we running a bit of a surplus? Are we breaking even? Are we running a deficit? Where do we stand now? What did Tim Cena say?
Mr. Cena basically said that they don't project. They're not able to project. So he was not sure right now where we stood. Okay,
so I've heard this line from the administration from time to time, that we have no idea where we stand financially in the middle of the year. And I guess that means after the books close, they close June 30, or the year closes June 30. The books wrap up in July and August. I suppose if we run a $10 million operating deficit, Tim Cena could say, our comptroller could say, gee, didn't see that coming. So his suggestion that the town has no idea whether we're running a surplus or running a deficit is not credible. The Board of Ed makes that calculation. They advise their board how they're doing on a monthly basis. The state of Connecticut does that with the state of Connecticut budget. I think all chief financial officers, probably all across the country, advise the management, advise their executive branch. Here's where we stand in the middle of the year, and so that way you can make adjustments. You can, maybe spend a little more or cut back a little spending if you're having a tough year. It's important to keep your pulse on the or your thumb on the financial pulse to know how you're doing month to month. Not in Wallingford. Well, of course we do. And I also just want to add, back when Jim Bowes was the comptroller and I was on the council, I would ask Jim Bowes during budget time, how are we doing with respect to a deficit or a surplus? And Jim Bowes would say, well, off the record, we're ahead a little bit or behind a little bit. They know. They're under orders, though, not to disclose it. There we go. Too bad. It's really too bad, but that's.
Well,
Yeah.
There's only 1 month left in the fiscal year, so that was a little worse. I mean, if you don't know by month 11, we're in trouble. But and then not only do we have to wait until the end of the fiscal year, but then we have to wait for the audit, because then I think they still are leery to tell us because they want to wait till the audit. So we won't know for a while.
Yeah, it's a little worrying. So the last clip I have is with Autumn Allinson. It's her first year on the council. Let's roll that clip and I'll get your reaction to it. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Councillor Allinson.
Well, saddle up, because this is not going to earn me friends. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of disagreement with what I'm about to say. And frankly, I don't know that I care. As an outsider, the budget workshops as they were conducted leave a lot to be desired and, frankly, are kind of a joke. We all task the departments to come here and answer questions, and I'm sure they're happy when we are engaged in the process, creating value for them in the time that they're dedicating away from activities and families outside of their normal workdays. We get our books about 3 to 4 weeks before the workshops. Mine even went to Canada with me. That is the opportunity for the council to work with the departments and administration to allocate changes to the mayor's budget. It's our opportunity to work collectively and legally within FOIA to collaborate on a solution if we disagree. Instead, one councillor vague texted me and asked me for my questions after all of the workshops were over. Then I chose not to engage for my own reasons, and I was lumped in as uncompromising and novice to the role. One day you'll be on our side, they say. My role as a new councillor, and as I see it, was to observe and understand this process, and frankly, my observation is that it's not a team process, especially since everyone thinks that they can do all the things better. We've heard a lot about bipartisanism. It's a cloak draped over this particular conversation where two factions of people who hope to one day be mayor work together to claim that they've saved the taxpayers' money while tisking the three of us who would oppose for our irresponsibility and loyalty. I'd argue this: I was not and am not opposed to keeping taxes stagnant in an effort to not further depend on the reserves. Apparently, though, if I could not compromise to do all the things that so-called bipartisanship wanted, I wasn't compromising. When I offered a compromise to take out the extra dependence on the reserves and leave all else alone, despite my disagreement overall and depending on ARPA, I was told that wasn't a compromise either. So I think we might need to reevaluate the definition of compromise.
So there you go. Before I get your reaction, I do have a specific question. There's a reference there to two factions. I think she said led by two people that both want to be mayor. One is Vinnie Testa. Who was she referring to on the other side?
I don't know if somebody's if somebody's made a declaration about that. I missed it.
All right, we'll let you off the hook on that one. But your reaction generally to her comments?
I think it's unfortunate that she found the workshops to be a joke, as she put it. I find them to be valuable. I mean, they're tedious. You're there almost every night for about 6 weeks. But I do get a lot out of them. I like when the department heads come before us, and it's kind of their chance to tell us what they're doing. And especially I love when the like the public utilities comes. I think it's kind of fascinating, all the things they do. So, you know, I'm disappointed that she didn't seem to get much out of the workshops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me change the subject on you. I want to talk a little bit about ARPA before we run out of time. I interviewed recently Riley O'Connell on the Citizen Mike show. On that show, he announced he was going to be challenging Mayor Dickinson. Of course, one obstacle he has is Vinnie Testa also has announced that he wants to challenge Mayor Dickinson. But in the course of the interview, Riley O'Connell and I talked about ARPA money. And Riley O'Connell said this. He said, I don't think much of any money should be going to businesses. And he cited funds that already came into Wallingford through the Paycheck Protection Plan from a year or two ago. So Riley O'Connell says, I don't think much money, should be going to businesses. Do you agree or disagree? You may not have to be 100% all in and have matching sentiments, but are you closer to him or closer to Mayor Dickinson, who has said time and time again, this money is going to businesses?
I think I've been pretty clear on it from the beginning. On this topic, I tend to agree more with Mr. O'Connell. Again, I look at the PPP and I see how much money Wallingford businesses received, and I look at things in our town that need work and need updating, and I just think this is a great way to be able to do these updates and these upgrades and fix things that need to be fixed in town without having to cost the taxpayers money. So I'm for a mix, if we end up having a mix of some of these, but for all of the money to go to businesses, I definitely not in favor of.
So I pulled out some archives I have from like 3 months ago when I went to a website called federalpay.org. Federalpay.org tracks the amount of paycheck protection money from 2020, 2021 that came to Wallingford's businesses. And I would encourage any viewers interested in that to check out federalpay.org to learn. So I ran some calculations as to try to give viewers an idea as to how much money actually came in. And you could break it down. You could search that website by type of business to just get a feel. So let me tell you a little bit of what I found. Beauty salons in Wallingford through the Paycheck Protection Plan got a total of I'm rounding now, 1.7 million. Lawyers got 1.2 million. There's another section, corporations. Well, I didn't run that. There's nonprofits that got money. It's very interesting. For example, the Connecticut Food Bank got almost $1 million. Not that I have a quarrel with any of this, by the way. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. Connecticut Food Bank got almost $1 million, but there was some, and the New Life Church got some. Holy Trinity School got some. Connecticut Healthcare Research and Education Foundation, just going down the line. The Cheshire Lutheran Church, the Zion Lutheran Church, SBA Small Business, whatever. Autism Services and Resources got some, and so on. I mean, there's a lot. We have. I did my lawyers. The corporations, let me just go back to that. United Concrete, 3.7 million. Thurston Foods got 2 tranches, one 3.5 million, and there's another tranche for 2 million. Full service restaurants got 6.3 million. Limited service restaurants got about 1.9 million in the aggregate. and so on and so forth. And you can break it down by industry. You see the small home builders, what they got. And there's also, you can also run it from the largest PPP grant to the smallest. And the largest was EJ Electric in Wallingford, got 5.5 million. And you go down the list: United Concrete, Thurston, Camco, Fosdick, APS Technology. There's some, on page 4 or 5, there's some doctors in there and some whatever. You add all these up. See, the data, the website doesn't add it up for you. You got to run adding machine tapes on each individual page. So it's not that easy to do. But it's going to be about 1.5 million to 2 million, 150 million to 200 million, that came into Wallingford already. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've looked at that website also, and that wasn't just that wasn't the only program either. There was the EIDL program. There were programs for there were all sorts of things, and rightfully so. I mean, these businesses were shut down. Our business was shut down for weeks, so rightfully so. The issue is now there's $13 million, which in the scheme of these businesses, we see how much they got, is not going to go very far for them. And that is not the only allowable use for this money, contrary to what many people in town are saying. There is a very, very wide use for this money. I was speaking to the leader of a nearby town recently, extremely business-friendly town, seen as one of the most business-friendly towns. They're not giving the money to businesses. They're spending it completely on town projects, playgrounds, new bleachers, sports fields. So it's a philosophical disagreement, and I'm not sure where we'll end up, but it's dragging on still.
Dragging on. So that's what I was going to ask you. Where do we go from here to try to advance this?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think I think and I hope it's going to be a compromise. There's some people that think should be completely spent on town projects. There's other people that think completely on businesses. There's other people that think it should be nonprofits and businesses. So at this point, I hope we come up with a good compromise. And it's funny, we always, in the car business, we say a good compromise is when everybody walks away a little bit unhappy. So I don't think anybody's going to get their way fully on this, but hopefully we can all meet in the middle and do something good for the town. So
my thought on this, my most burning thought, I guess, is that the last we knew, at the beginning of May, the town administration untethered, disconnected the concept of hardship as a requirement for an ARPA grant, meaning that under Mayor Dickinson's proposal, the Law Department and Economic Development Commission, you could be a well-capitalized business and still qualify and get ARPA money from the town of Wallingford. You could be well-capitalized, successful, in no financial stress, not be in need. And the town of Wallingford purposely and willfully struck out the requirement that your business have a hardship, no more. To me, that was shocking. And I'm still mulling over what my most considered opinion is, but my tentative most considered opinion is that separating hardship and just taking that out of the equation, I think might violate federal regulations. I've read the final rule as it pertains to small businesses. I read the interim final rule, and the idea of hardship and need and financial stress is interwoven into that rule. And hardship is, I think, inextricably linked with any notion of losses like revenue losses. Revenue losses might be a signal that a business is experiencing hardship, but I think it's against the intent of the federal rule to reimburse for losses when hardship is not there. Just my preliminary, final, interim opinion.
Yeah, and a business could certainly have had a loss and could show that, but not be experiencing a hardship because they got PPP money. I mean, there are for sure businesses who had, even though they could show losses after they got that PPP, they had a stellar year. So because of that, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, without that current hardship, I think to take that out was not a good thing.
Let's make that the final word. Christina, thanks for coming back on the Citizen Mike Show. We may not see you until next fall. We're on our, one of our last episodes. But thanks, for your good work all year. Thanks for being a good sport of the Citizen Mike Show. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Thanks to WPAA for broadcasting the Citizen Mike Show weeknights at 9. Good night, Christina. Good night, everybody. See you next time.